A mysterious forest where everything is alive, trees, plants, even the leaves themselves. Many researchers have entered this forest, but none have ever returned alive. The story begins with a vast, dense jungle where a team of hunters is searching for something deep inside. Their leader, named Acquirer, leads the expedition in search of the tear of moon, a rare herb believed to grow only in this forest. It is said to possess magical properties capable of granting immortality and curing even the deadliest diseases. Shockingly, despite everyone knowing of its existence, no one has ever brought it out alive. Determined to find it at any cost, Acquirer and his team continue traveling through the forest. At first, everything seems fine, but soon the trees and plants around them begin to move. The disturbance is caused by the forest's living vegetation. Everything here, even the leaves, are alive, protecting the sacred herb from outsiders. In moments, the vines and trees attack the team, injuring many. Several of Acquirer's men are killed, and he himself becomes trapped among the living vines, unable to move. Hours pass as they struggle to survive, believing the end is near. But just as hope fades, a group of tribal people arrives and rescues them, taking the survivors back to their village. Grateful for their help, Acquirer thanks the tribe, but his obsession with the tear of moon remains. He begins asking the tribal leader about the herb, assuming they must know about it since they've lived there for generations. The leader, however, understands how important the tear of moon is to the forest's balance and refuses to reveal its location. Enraged, Acquirer decides he must have it no matter the cost. He learns that the leader carries a key that leads to the herb's sacred place. In greed and madness, Acquirer and his team betray their saviors, attacking the tribe and killing everyone. They steal the key and burn the entire village to ashes. It's a horrifying moment. The forest mourns the death of its protectors. As Acquirer moves forward, the living trees and plants strike back even more violently. Before dying, the tribal people had cursed Acquirer and his companions. Their souls would be trapped in the forest for eternity, never able to leave, and anyone who tried to cross the river within the forest would turn to stone. After speaking these words, their spirits were sealed forever, making the forest even more dangerous than before. Years later, the story shifts to the present day inside a grand museum, where a brilliant researcher named Lily listens to a presentation. The speaker is her brother, Brian, explaining new research about the tear of moon. Despite the ancient curse, scientists still believe in its power and hope to find it, using its magical leaves to cure many modern diseases. Lily and Brian share detailed information about the herb's qualities and warn that the forest is far more dangerous than it appears. No one who has entered it has ever returned alive. Yet, despite the risks, many remain determined to venture into the forest in search of the mysterious tear of moon. After the speech ended, Lily quietly walked away from the crowd to leave the museum, but suddenly she was stopped by a prince, the owner of the entire museum. The prince wanted to talk to her, and though they exchanged a few words, their conversation didn't last long. Lily managed to slip away unnoticed, heading upstairs. She wasn't there for the event, she was searching for something hidden inside the museum. After opening several ancient boxes that had been preserved for years, she finally found what she was looking for, the same mysterious key that could lead to the tear of moon. It was the exact key we saw earlier when Acquirer took it from the tribal leader. This meant Lily also wanted to reach that forbidden place using the key. Now that she had it, she needed to escape the museum with her brother before anyone found out. But the prince had already become suspicious and went after her. Lily tried to run, but during her escape, she slipped and was left hanging from a staircase railing. One wrong move and she'd fall to her death. The prince arrived and threatened her, demanding the key or else he'd let her fall. Lily, with no other choice, handed the key over. Moments later, she jumped down to safety and fled. When the prince opened the box to check the key, he was shocked. It was empty except for a toy. Lily had outsmarted him with her clever trick. Furious, the prince ordered his men to find the real key at any cost, knowing how valuable it was. Meanwhile, Lily and her brother Brian already had the true key in their possession. They planned to enter the cursed forest and locate the tear of moon, but they knew the journey would be extremely dangerous. They needed brave companions to help them complete the mission. The scene then shifts to a small settlement near the edge of the mysterious forest, where a riverboat guide named Frank earns a living by taking tourists on jungle tours. He had spent almost his entire life there and knew every inch of the forest. Tourists loved him because he handled every situation calmly, even when things went wrong. But like every good man, Frank had his own troubles. A businessman, accompanied by his pet parrot, arrived one day to collect money Frank had borrowed. When Frank told him he hadn't earned enough yet to repay the debt, the businessman refused to listen. He ordered his men to remove the engine from Frank's boat, leaving him unable to work. Heartbroken but determined, Frank found out where the engine was hidden and the location of the key to the drawer where it was kept. He planned to steal it back. Around the same time, Lily and Brian arrived in the area to meet that very businessman. He was supposed to provide them a boat so they could travel deep into the forest. As Lily entered his office, Frank was leaving after stealing the key to retrieve his engine. Mistaking Frank for the businessman, Lily approached him. Realizing her misunderstanding, Frank decided to play along. He learned that Lily was looking for someone with a boat to take her deep into the forest for her research. Seeing an opportunity, Frank confidently told her that no one could guide her better than he could. He claimed to know every part of the jungle and began negotiating the price for their journey. As Lily and Frank were talking, the businessman suddenly appeared behind them with his assistant. At that moment, Lily realized that Frank wasn't the man she had come to meet. The real businessman was standing right there. Furious at being deceived, she turned away from Frank and began walking toward the businessman. Frank tried to convince her to stay, but then his eyes fell on the key hanging around Lily's neck, the same ancient key connected to the tier of moon. Realizing what it was, Frank decided he couldn't let her leave so easily. He tried harder to persuade her, offering to take her on the trip for a much lower price. But Lily had already made up her mind. She didn't want to travel with someone who stole things, and it seemed she was going to go with the businessman instead. Just then, out of nowhere, a ferocious jaguar appeared and attacked everyone. The animal was massive and deadly, but Frank fearlessly grabbed it, lifted it into the air, and threw it away, saving everyone's life. Lily, stunned by what she saw, realized Frank was strong, brave, and exactly the kind of person she needed for her research mission. After thinking it over, she decided to go with Frank instead of the businessman, who had already prepared a boat for her. Lily only told Frank that she and her brother needed to conduct research inside the forest. After settling on the charges, they began preparing the boat. Frank secretly managed to retrieve his stolen engine as well, meaning the boat was ready to sail again. Later, it was revealed that the jaguar who had attacked them was actually Frank's pet. He often used it during tours to gain people's trust and make his adventures seem more thrilling. Once all the supplies were loaded, Lily and the team were ready to start their journey. But suddenly, several men jumped onto the boat and grabbed Lily, locking her inside a cage and roughing her up badly before taking her away. Frank had no idea she was being kidnapped. These men were working for the businessman, who had ordered them to capture Lily at any cost because he knew she had the key to the tier of moon and wanted it for himself. However, capturing Lily wasn't as easy as they thought. While they were busy moving her, she quietly unlocked the cage and waited for the right moment to escape. When one of the men came too close, she struck him down and broke free, fighting off anyone who tried to stop her. Just then, Frank arrived and helped her escape. The businessman's men chased them relentlessly, trying to kill them. Lily climbed onto a pulley and moved across to another platform while Frank took control of another boat nearby, positioning it so she could jump to safety. Finally, Lily reached solid ground, thanks to Frank's quick thinking and courage. Realizing they needed to get back to their real boat to escape, Frank called out to Lily and dived into the water. But Lily wasn't a good swimmer, so she decided to take the land route instead. Unfortunately, more of the businessman's men were waiting for her there. She outsmarted them again and kept running. Then came the real shock. A massive submarine surfaced from the river, carrying the prince and his soldiers, who had come after Lily to take the key from her. Lily barely managed to climb onto Frank's boat, but now the true danger wasn't the businessman's men, it was the prince himself. Emerging from the submarine, the prince spotted Lily and opened fire on their boat with a machine gun. Frank instantly realized they were under attack and began steering the boat in every direction, skillfully dodging the bullets. Somehow, they narrowly escaped the gunfire, but it was clear their journey into the cursed forest was only beginning. But Prince had something even more dangerous. He was about to use a water missile to destroy their boat. Frank, who was already moving ahead with Lily on board, suddenly saw the missile fired straight toward them. One small touch, and the entire boat would explode. That's when Frank's quick thinking came into play. He realized the missile was coming from underwater, so he used a platform mechanism to lift his boat into the air. For a few seconds, the boat soared above the water, and the missile hit the platform instead, triggering a massive explosion. Frank's boat remained completely unharmed, and he continued moving forward with Lily. Meanwhile, Prince's submarine went out of control and crashed onto the same platform, leaving him and his crew severely injured. It wasn't clear if they would even survive. On the other hand, Frank and Lily were completely safe, continuing their journey toward Lily's research destination, unaware of the dangers that awaited them or whether the man she was traveling with could truly be trusted. Hours passed as they traveled from morning till night, but their destination was still far away. Eventually, Lily's brother Brian joined them on Frank's boat, and Frank prepared food for everyone, catching and grilling fresh fish with skill. It was clear Frank knew how to survive under extreme conditions. As they continued their voyage, Brian went below deck to rest but came running back in terror after spotting Frank's Jaguar, the same one they had seen earlier in shock. Frank quickly calmed him down, saying it was his pet and there was nothing to fear. When Lily heard this, she was stunned. She realized Frank had deliberately used his pet Jaguar earlier to test their trust, proving he wasn't as brave as she had imagined. But now that they were deep into their journey, there was no turning back. Elsewhere, Prince and his surviving men reached a dark, cursed area in the forest, a place where, years ago, Aguirre and his crew had turned to stone after trying to cross the sea. Prince knew this spot well and had come seeking their help to find the Tear of the Moon. He poured sacred seawater onto the statues, and immediately deadly snakes emerged, killing several of his men. Before they could attack Prince, he made them an offer: if they helped him find the girl and the key, he would give them the Tear of the Moon to set them free. The spirits of Aguirre and his crew accepted the deal and agreed to join him. The next morning, Frank's boat sailed across the ocean, but the current began to grow dangerously strong, a clear sign a waterfall was nearby. In such a situation, one must constantly monitor the flow of water. If you realize a waterfall lies ahead and your boat won't stop, the only option is to steer toward the large rocks nearby. Though the force of the current may prevent full control, you can still angle slightly to the side and wedge the boat against the rocks before climbing out. It's the only way to survive. Because, no matter what movies show, no one truly survives falling from a giant waterfall. At the bottom, there could be huge rocks that could kill you if you fall on them. So it's always better to get off before the waterfall or keep a rope with you. If getting stuck on the rocks doesn't work, tie the rope to something solid so your boat can stay in one place for a while. But Frank wasn't the kind of man to follow typical survival techniques. His style was different. Just before going over the waterfall, he turned the boat sharply, steering it toward the other side and barely escaping the deadly drop. However, the boat was badly damaged in the process and couldn't go any farther without repairs. So the three of them got down, gathered supplies, and prepared some food. While inside the boat, Lily discovered some research papers that mentioned the key and the Tear of the Moon in great detail. She couldn't understand why Frank had done such deep research on it. When Frank arrived, Lily confronted him and demanded the truth. She had realized that Frank was using them to reach the Tear of the Moon for himself. Disappointed and hurt, Lily listened as Frank explained that he'd been searching for it for years but had never succeeded. Lily eventually understood that it wasn't his fault. Everyone in the world was after it, yet no one had found it. She assured Frank that this time, they would find it together because she now had the key. From that moment, they became a team with a single goal: to locate the Tear of the Moon and take it away. But before they could plan their next move, strange noises surrounded them. Outside, a tribe of fierce natives had encircled them. They couldn't run, because any sudden movement would mean certain death. So they decided to follow the natives' commands and went along to their camp. Frank, who understood a bit of their language, tried to explain that they meant no harm and were only conducting a nature study. But the tribe insisted they should be killed, claiming researchers always break the laws of nature and bring disaster. Lily, however, showed courage and tried to defend herself with a weapon, though the natives only laughed. Then they looked at Frank and said his plan had worked, revealing that this entire situation was his doing, set up to get the key from Lily. Furious and heartbroken, Lily slapped Frank. Soon, a tribal woman began to speak, telling them where the Tear of the Moon was located, a dangerous place filled with dark energy. Lily decided to continue alone, refusing to trust Frank again, believing he might betray her once more. Frank tried to warn her that the dangers ahead were far worse and that she wouldn't survive without him, but Lily ignored him and started to leave. Before she could go, however, a loud roar echoed through the forest. It was Aguirre and his cursed, monstrous spirits. Their decayed bodies slithered with venomous snakes, and they had come for Lily's key. The spirits attacked the natives, causing chaos everywhere. Lily ran, clutching the key, as Aguirre's undead warriors pursued her. Frank jumped into the fight to protect her, battling the monstrous crew with everything he had. But Aguirre's forces were too powerful. They took the key from Lily and handed it to Aguirre. Frank confronted him and fought desperately to retrieve it, even as snakes coiled around him. After a fierce struggle, Frank managed to snatch the key, but Aguirre stabbed him with a knife, sending him falling from a great height. With his last ounce of strength, Frank threw the key toward Lily before plunging into the depths below. Lily could only watch helplessly as Frank fell, motionless, her unlikely ally now gone forever. Lily remembered the tribal woman's warning that if she crossed to the far side of the river, Acquirer and his dangerous followers couldn't harm her, so she and her brother ran across the river. Acquirer chased them but dared not follow, for he and his crew would turn to stone if they crossed the sea. The next morning Lily returned to the spot where Frank had fallen and, to her shock, found him still alive, an immortal with a sword still embedded in his body. She pulled it out with great effort, and Brian fainted at the sight. Frank confessed that he, too, had once been one of Acquirer's cursed companions but had left the plan, earning only a partial curse. He couldn't die, yet he'd been free to escape. After leaving Brian with the villagers for safety, Lily and Frank continued toward the Tier of the Moon. Brian was later kidnapped by the prince and his submarine crew, who demanded to know Lily's whereabouts. Frank and Lily reached a site where a large submerged gate marked the entrance. Frank dove and found an opening, but Lily, who couldn't swim well, accidentally pressed a button that trapped her in a cage as water rose. Frank resuscitated her when she began to suffocate, and he distracted swarming piranhas so she could work the mechanism, free herself, and press a second button that drained the water and opened a massive door. Emerging, they discovered the prince waiting with Brian captive. The prince threatened to kill Brian unless Lily surrendered the key, so she handed it over, and the prince led them all through the gate to a gigantic tree whose glowing leaves should produce the Tier of the Moon, but the tree lay dark and lifeless. The prince demanded to know how to activate the tree and where the key should be placed, but the spot wasn't obvious. Frank told the prince he could reveal the way, if, in return, the prince gave him a Tier of the Moon so he could be freed. He wanted to be free from his entire life and finally die. But here, Lily felt disappointed because she had grown fond of Frank during the whole process. Still, they continued their journey to find the Lord. Lily asked the prince that she wanted a Tier of the Moon too, but the prince made it clear that there would be only one Tier of the Moon for all, and after that, they would be taken safely away. Frank then came to Lily and told her to take the Tier of the Moon and leave immediately. After a quick search, they found the slot for the key. Following the instructions given by the tribes, they placed the snake's heart into the slot, which activated the entire area. A large tree, which had been completely black, turned lush green. It was the Tier of the Moon tree, whose leaves could be used for many purposes. Seeing the opportunity, Frank immediately attacked the prince's men. He didn't want anyone to misuse the flowers to gain the Tier of the Moon. The powers were only effective during the eclipse, and as the eclipse ended, the flowers began to wither. Lily was lucky to reach the tree in time and picked a small flower, but the prince attacked her to get it. Lily handed the flower directly to Frank. Meanwhile, Ickver and his dangerous followers arrived and attacked Frank. Frank first ensured Brian's safety by leaving him in a secure spot and then distracted the attackers. Frank was badly injured, and Ickver showed no mercy. When Lily reached her brother, she saw that Brian had the flower, which Frank had given him. Frank sped the boat and crashed it into the wall that had cursed all of them, and the vines trapped everyone, turning them to stone, including Frank. Lily was heartbroken because she loved Frank and thought he might not survive. She placed the flower in his mouth, hoping it would revive him, but at first, nothing happened. Feeling completely despondent, she moved on, only to find that in the next moment, Frank had come back to life. Lily hugged him tightly. The eclipse had ended, and they could now travel safely. They even had an extra flower, which was later taken to the city to make many medicines. And with that, their story comes to an end.